shot there. Yep. Nope. Still got the wrapper on it, so it's important. Makes me look smart, so people will listen. All right. Ready? Hey, church family. Pastor Darren here, and I just want to share with you a brief devotional encouragement on this Good Friday. It's a great Friday. Every Friday is great with the Lord on the throne, and even in these wild times, we can trust in our Father in heaven and what He is ultimately doing. And Good Friday is a good reminder of that. And it's an interesting holiday as we think about the symbol of hope, which is the cross. I say it's interesting and even ironic because think about it, the cross is everywhere. It's on our church steeples, it's emblazoned on our pulpits, it's in our jewelry, and nobody really thinks that's strange. But the cross is the place of death and destruction. It has a long history of horrible, excruciating death. So the fact that people would wear that or put it on a steeple is in some ways odd, but yet it's not. For it's a symbol of hope. It's hope for us. It's hope for those who have believed. And so I want to remind you of just one of the many reasons the cross is a symbol of hope. And that is this principle. Through the cross, Jesus absorbed the wrath of God. Now, some people may be under the impression that God is the one who lets sinners off the hook. That God is just so loving that He couldn't possibly bring Himself to punish people, really. So He just lets them off the hook. And thus, His love allows that to happen. But yet, does this really make sense when we think about God? Well, think about how you feel about justice. Imagine a judge just in our day and age, and there was a horrible crime, and they found out who did it, and it was clear, and this person was guilty, and the judge just said, well, I'm going to do something loving here. Just let him off the hook. I mean, people would be outraged. Because we do understand justice and we desire justice, it's just not always for ourselves. So that doesn't make sense. In fact, Proverbs 17:15 tells us, assures us that God hates when the guilty go unpunished, go free. He detests it. So what do we do with this? And more so, what happens to the wrath of God? You see, God is just, but yet He is loving. And where the two of those come together, when we understand that, it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. 1 John 4, verse 10 tells us that in this is love. Not that we have loved God, but that He loved us and sent His Son to be the propitiation for our sins. Propitiation. Got that term at the end there? It's an interesting one. And what it is speaking to is the fact that there is the removal of God's divine wrath through Jesus. It's the propitiation, the removal of God's divine wrath. In Galatians chapter 3, verse 13, it says, Christ redeemed us from the curse of the law by becoming a curse for us. For it is written, cursed is everyone who is hanged on a tree. Did you catch that? So Jesus became a curse for us. You see, there needs to be something done with the wrath of God. You see, Jesus didn't simply cancel the wrath of God, He absorbed it. That is incredible. Because God is just and this wrath must be done something with. And so Jesus is the answer for that. It wasn't simply withdrawn, it was spent. And it was spent not on you or me, but on Jesus, on that cross. And there is where we begin to see and understand the hope that is the cross. that Jesus did absorb the wrath of God. Someone summarized it like this: if God were not just, there'd be no demand for the Son of God to suffer and die. If God were not loving, then there would be no willingness for God to allow the Son to suffer and die. But God is just and God is loving. So the solution is when the love of God is willing to meet the demands of the justice of God. And that happened. It happened a few thousand years ago on the cross of Calvary. On that fateful day when Jesus Christ, fully God, fully man, who has walked this earth and lived it perfectly. That's incredible. And he had suffered, and he had been tempted and proven innocent. And then, for it was the will of God for his love to meet the demands of his wrath, went to the cross, and there on the cross, in the midst of all the physical suffering and pain, the wrath of God is absorbed in Jesus. That is such great hope for us, because that was meant for me, and that was meant for you. And that makes it a good Friday, a great Friday. And I hope you're reminded of that. I hope that you've repented, you've turned from unbelief in God and turned to belief in God. If you haven't, and you're hearing this good news, that the wrath of God that's upon you, as someone who's fallen short of his glory, and we all have, Scripture's clear. Today, would you turn to Christ? Would you pray to God? Admit your sin. Believe in him. And commit to following him. John 3:16 assures us that this great news for sinners, the wrath of God absorbed by Jesus Christ on the cross, is for whosoever believes. So believe today. Those of you who have, be reminded, be hopeful, for that cross is a great symbol of hope. Have a blessed Good Friday. Remember, that means tomorrow is Saturday. Have a great Friday, because Sunday is coming.